2024 is coming to a close, and here at Second Wind, we asked some of our contributors if they had a special game that they wanted to talk about. Aggressive positivity! Go!
You know, text adventure and type 'em up games have always really excited me, which kinda sucks, as I'm a heavily dyslexic pleb. So I've always calmly watched them from the bushes, vicariously living through people with better word engines in their skulls like Yahtzee, Marty, or Jess. But due to its intense praise, Cryptmaster is the first one I've actually attempted to delve into myself, and oh boy, was I glad I did, because I've stumbled upon one of my favourite games of this entire year. All interactions, puzzles, and combat in this game are entirely delivered through wordplay in real time, and it's amazing how fluid and free this all felt. Even though I know for a fact they're using divergences to guide the narrative in its predestined directions, it felt as if I was effecting change upon its world, because nearly every phrase I threw at the game, no matter how silly, Cryptmaster and its NPCs would have an equally verbose reply. It felt as if we were actually conversing in real time, because that was driven by me choosing and typing out my own responses rather than picking them from a dialogue box. The wordplay and sarcasm of the Underworld's inhabitants really reminded me of Jim Henson's Labyrinth, extending all the way to the fretless bass solos of the soundtrack. So much love has clearly been poured into this decrepit world, and careful attention has been given to allowing the player to feel like they're a part of it. I have so much more to say about how this game was put together, but I'll save that for a full episode of Design Delve and let someone else gush about another amazing game. Happy holidays, gang.
During what turned out to be a particularly busy year, I found a new appreciation for games that can be consumed in a single sitting. One of my favorites from this category was 10 Bells, a liminal space horror game set in an English pub. The gameplay loop is extremely simple. If you don't see any anomalies, proceed to the pub's private room. If you do spot one, turn back into the lavatory hallway. The anomalies range from relatively subtle environmental differences, such as the bar taps facing the wrong way, to overt hauntings, such as a bloodied corpse falling from the ceiling. If you die or incorrectly identify whether or not an anomaly was present, your progress is reset. There's some creepy imagery and a handful of well-positioned jump scares in 10 Bells, but what the game really excels at is generating paranoia that escalates as you get closer and closer to reaching the end of the loop. You've scoured the pub from top to bottom and identified nothing suspicious. But what if you're missing something? What if there's a rogue coaster or a dreadfully ugly rug hiding in plain sight that will cause you to lose your hard-earned progress if you don't discover it? Once, I was so absorbed in examining a shelf for nefarious knickknacks that I failed to notice the appearance of an actual ghost and was promptly killed. If, like me, your idea of a cozy evening activity is a spooky spot the difference game that'll make you question your every move, be sure to give 10 Bells a try.
Can Shadow of the Erd Tree be one of the best games of the year when it's just a DLC? It can when it's closer in scale to a small sequel. There's a lot to be said about Miquella's expanded role, the insight into Queen Marika's origins, and context on the Omen Curse. But who cares about any of that when they introduced throwable weapons? The only thing better than wielding a massive hammer is chucking that hammer into the face of a curse blade. With Shadow of the Erd Tree, From Software has graced us with insane new enemies, always backed up with even more insane lore, like the fleshy jar innards that slough out of pots and try to tangle you in their legs. I hated them, but once I reached Bonnie Village and got more insight into the Newman people, I couldn't help but pity them as I smashed their jar shells into 100 pieces and exploded their bodies with holy fire. Despite how widespread the genre of Souls-like has become, nobody in the industry today makes games as thoughtfully designed as From Software. It's nice to be reminded every few years why they still hold the throne.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth feels like a dream manifested into video game form. Even though I knew the general beats of the adventure, revisiting these places alongside characters that had been etched in my memory since I was a kid was akin to literal magic. Everything from the neon grandeur of Gold Saucer to the cozy moments spent between party members felt like a thing that, by all logic, should not exist, and yet it does. There's a pretty hefty barrier of entry for the middle slice of a trilogy that's re-examining a series of games, movies, and novels from the past 3 decades. It's a lot to ask from folks. But if you're like me and you're willing to meet the game where it stands, you'll find an adventure unlike any other. The game is so much. Rich story arcs, deep combat, sprawling open world zones, a litany of side quests, and minigames up the wazoo. But for me, every single one of these elements coalesce into a singular experience that somehow enriches a story that I was already so familiar with. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a massive, sprawling mess of a game, and I loved every single bit of it.
It's honestly a little shocking to me that a game as good as Nine Souls continues to fly under the radar. It's a 2D action platformer from Red Candle Games that's taken inspiration from two truly outstanding titles, namely Hollow Knight and Sekiro, and manages to do both justice while standing apart from them with unique ideas and mechanics. In Nine Souls, parry is king. The bulk of your offensive capabilities are tied to effective defense, like your talisman strikes, which cause a delayed explosion you need to find proper openings to utilize. This system results in one of the absolute best combat experiences I've ever had, with some of its boss encounters now ranking among the best of the best in my mind. The game's setting, story, and combat are all full of depth, and I came away from it all itching for more. I haven't stopped checking in on the game's subreddit since completing it. Screw best of 2024. Nine Souls might be one of the best games I've ever played. Point blank period.
I didn't finish as many games as usual this year, in part due to poor health and my attention being dragged in too many directions to sit down and finish a whole game. Once I gave Metaphor ReFantazio a try, I cleared out my schedule and powered through this 100-hour RPG in only a few weeks. The game is basically Fantasy Persona with some tweaks around the edges. The characters can all switch classes, the battle system is based on the press turn system from SMT, and the setting is different. But other than that, it's just another Persona game. The thing is, I love Persona games. The mix of crunchy, turn-based RPG and time management social play is better balanced here, with fewer incentives to do all your dungeon crawling in a huge grinding block. The characters are as lovable as always, and the story features some wild and exciting twists and turns, despite failing to be as ambitious as it could be. I was compelled to keep playing this in a year where I struggled to finish things. And that's because I had a great time with the propulsive, melodramatic story and tough RPG gameplay. When I can't put down a game because I'm having too much fun, that's worth celebrating.
Helldivers 2 is easily my personal game of the year for 2024. I'm not playing it as much as I was at launch, but every time I load it up, it's an absolute blast to play with my friends. Before the game was released, it wasn't even really on my radar, but once you're in the game, it immediately hooks you with its punchy combat, incredible visuals, sound design, and lots of explosions. The sandbox nature of the game helps to stand out against the many cooperative shooter games on the market, and then you throw in the satire and player-created comedy moments, and you've got a recipe for a great time. Helldivers 2 is a multiplayer game that's just focused on being fun over being balanced or competitive, and we need more multiplayer games like that, instead of the ultra-competitive shooters that studios keep attempting to pump out into the market. Also, ragdoll physics make every game better. It's just a fact of game development.
The dialogue system of interrogating philosophical concepts has a long history, perhaps most famously deployed as the Socratic method beloved by the ancient Greeks. It's just that you don't see it too often in video games, probably because many aren't really interrogating much outside of your ability to line up a shot. Indica, the character and the game, has more questions than answers. Her companion, Ilya, is all answers, yet he can't provide the satisfaction she seeks. You're not likely to come away from the game with a stronger grasp on what it means to believe in God or how to rank your sins, but you'll certainly be thinking about it. The world of Indica is somehow both dreary and surreal, like the level set in a caviar packing plant filled with 4-story-tall fish. The action-adventure gameplay, platforming, puzzle solving, is largely a scaffolding for the game's intense religious inquiry, yet it manages to be gratifying in its own right. Familiar game elements like leveling and picking up hidden items are used to keep you tilted. It's hard to know what the payoff on the meta aspects will be until you reach the conclusion when it all comes together. Not in a tidy ending, but in a game experience that you will never forget.
It's hard to really quantify just how much joy is pulsating through each and every moment of Team Asobi's Astrobot. On its surface, it's a gorgeous, expressive 3D platformer with a level of creativity on display that's rarely seen in the genre outside of Nintendo. Before the endorphin rush of one mechanic wears off, you're whisked away to the next charming idea. All of this is built around flexible controls that stretch from accommodating newcomers to acting as the backbone for speedrunners. But dig past this surface, and Astrobot is something else entirely. As your hub world starts to fill up with familiar faces from the past 30 years of gaming, it becomes clear that this is a celebration of the medium itself. As someone who grew up with the original PlayStation, I cannot express the joy I felt every single time I found a new memory from the platform's triumphant past. From Wild Arms to Ico to Okami and everything in between, Astrobot is as much an interactive museum as it is a wonderful platformer.
1000 Times Resist is not only my favorite game of 2024, it's among the best story-driven games I've ever played, and I haven't been able to stop talking about it since I reviewed it earlier this year. Seeing friends, coworkers, and followers of Second Wind heed my incessant recommendations to add it to their libraries never fails to excite me because I know those people are in for a truly remarkable experience. Many of the team members at Sunset Visitor have backgrounds in performing arts such as dance, theater, and music. And perhaps their synergy of skills, insights, and creative instincts is exactly what it takes to present 12 hours of text-heavy, mechanically simple gameplay in a manner that's consistently engaging and often downright thrilling. 1000 Times Resist's outstanding writing, voice acting, and soundtrack afford a remarkably nuanced exploration of some heavy, complex themes, some that I could relate to, and others that I felt grateful for the opportunity to learn more about. From beginning to end, 1000 Times Resist is a testament to video games as an art form and uniquely effective storytelling vehicle, weaving a narrative that's both extraordinary and mundane, personal and universal.
Unicorn Overlord fuses turn-based tactics with real-time combat in a way that removes much of the tedium from both. I came into the game fairly clueless about what to expect. As a longtime fan of Vanillaware's previous titles, I was surprised by the lack of any direct control over combat. But the speed and visual flair of the automated battles kept my interest long enough to fully captivate me once the extent of the condition-based battle system was revealed. I got lost in the loop of collecting new units, unlocking new abilities, and pairing those abilities with other units in order to wipe enemy teams. It's like a supercharged shot of the satisfaction you get from a successful encounter in a tactics game, but you feel it all throughout the planning and building process, as well as the actual fights. It's not often I feel a loss of self-control when it comes to my gaming habits, but Unicorn Overlord became an addiction I loved every second of.
A Souls-like where you play as a hermit crab and your armor and abilities are tied to your breakable shell is a great idea, and it's tied together with a few quality of life changes that make this a friendlier approach to the genre. You can respawn right in front of bosses to retry, a skill tree unlocks everything from parrying to grapple attacks, and there's an assist mode to let you customize the difficulty or shoot bosses with a gun if you get stuck. But the kicker is that the gameplay gets what makes Souls-likes fun. Enemy attack animations are readable, but require varied strategies and timings to overcome. Parrying and dodging feel just right. The encounter and level design keep serving up new challenges while maintaining a sense of danger and allowing for exploration. The story is also witty, class-conscious, and surprisingly emotional at times, meaning the game fires on all cylinders. As a person who likes Souls-likes, I think this is one of the better ones, and certainly among the best indie games released this year.
Nria: The Last Song is a new Souls-like game inspired by Italian folklore and developed by Giamma Games. While it's not one of the best games I played this year, it was one of my favorites. As I've played more and more Souls-likes over the years, I've come to realize that my favorites are the ones where I enjoy the level design the most. I love the loop of exploring every nook and cranny of these maps, looking for upgrade materials, secret areas, bosses, and loot. The Souls games that are just focused on combat are the ones I tend to drop more quickly than the others. I'm always up for a good challenge, but not many of the Souls-like alternatives get the map design right. While Nria may not be the most difficult Souls-like, or the most polished, when I played it this summer, I just couldn't put it down thanks to its unique setting, solid combat, and excellent level design. Much like Hexworks and Neo is, Giamma Games is another studio I'll be keeping an eye on to join the upper echelon of Souls-like developers when they inevitably take another stab at it down the line.
This video is brought to you by Lord Embermaze, an upcoming adventure RPG where each of your individual steps control the flow of time. Venture deep into this gorgeous pixel art underworld, exploring dungeons, fighting monsters, and trying not to end up on the business end of a spike trap. The strategic puzzle-like combat means that you'll need to take careful consideration of each and every step. It's like playing hopscotch if you were also being chased by giant killer bees. Luckily, these dungeons are filled with helpful artifacts to aid you in your journey, and don't worry, you don't have to return any of these to some dumb museum. I mean, I ride just one of the dinosaur skeletons, and they give me a lifetime ban. Idiots. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to the Steam page now to wishlist Lord Embermaze and play a free prologue today. Thanks to everybody for watching this, and thanks to the team for sharing your joys. That was really wonderful. Thanks to these names in particular for us existing. All of you watching, commenting, thumbs upping, and Patreoning help us make these videos possible. We appreciate you. I didn't write a piece for this, but some quick shout outs to Animal Well for being embarrassingly good, and UFO 50 for being amazing over and over again. Also, shout out to Double Stuff Oreos. Just my favorite cookie. Enjoy eating them. Shout out to fleece blankets on a cold winter's night. Movie playing on in the background. Appreciate that. Shout out to Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. Shout out to Fextra Life and Wikidot. Those fan-made websites that can help guide you through games. I use Fextra Life a lot. So appreciate